Hey, good evening. This is Allie Braswell, and if it's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, it's time for Off the Record, the Real Talk podcast. Hey, glad to be joining you here and going into our second series. Just finished a powerful series on pivots in life and career, and now moving ahead to talk about something that has sustained me and helped support me and actually laid the foundation of where I've been able to achieve, and that's relationships. And I'm not talking about the relationship of you and your husband or your spouse or your significant other. I'm talking about how to build powerful relationships in the business community, in the communities that we serve, with our colleagues, with people who can help propel careers forward. I learned a long time ago is that it's the reputation that you have. I can remember being a young Marine in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. Before we would leave the barracks, there was a mirror that was there on the wall that would say, check your gig line, check yourself. And if there was enough of a Marine showing in the mirror that if somebody accused you of being one, would it convict you? That's something I've lived by is that I must be who I am no matter what situation I'm in. And I must be of good character and reputation so that before I ever get into the room, my reputation and my character has been there because of people who have represented themselves in my life. I created a framework around this and I represented in my book, my latest book, Engage, Invest, Grow. And it's all about the SHIPS framework. You'll hear me talk about that and relate to that a lot here today in the podcast. But what I'm really talking about is telling people about how to build good relationships. And if you think about the SHIPS framework, which is what is something I created, SHIPS is a play on the last word of scholarship, partnership, sponsorship, and ownership. Those all come together to help you build and master relationships. And relationships have opened doors for me and moved me ahead. We're going to break down each one of those ships as they come into port and spend some time just learning about them. And today we're going to start with the key of laying the foundation of really understanding what a foundation of trust and transparency is all about in building powerful relationships. A lot of times, people say, I did that because I trust him or I trust her. And trust is one of the cornerstones to building a powerful relationship. The other side of that is transparency, making sure that what you say is what you do and what you do is what you say. And as we walk through this together today, I hope to be able to show you that at the center of every connection are shared goals. That in scholarship, when we learn about each other, which we'll spend in-depth time in on this journey through the SHIP series, is what I'm calling it, we're going to spend some time really understanding that through shared goals, they drive a meaningful relationship and that will last you for years. I can remember being a young manager at Walt Disney Parks and Resorts and working with Walt Disney Imagineering to help put out the training around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it was called The Journey Continues. And my mentor in that work was none other than William Bill Guillory of Innovations International. And one of the things he impressed upon me was how learning and how transformation happened, because a lot of times we'll talk about meaningful relationships, but it really comes back to what Bill shared in talking about how people handle change. And that you can write a policy and force a behavior, but you have to change a belief system in order to have transformational change. Well, I think that carries over into relationships. I can tell you I like you and try to build a relationship. If it's transactional, I'm only looking for the sale or looking for the deal or looking for what I can take away from the relationship. When it becomes transformational, is when I look to cultivate and grow that relationship. It may be that if you're at a networking event, I can remember walking around with a box full of cards from job to job, from office to office of people I had met. But one of the key things that you can do is drop a relationship catalyst, which is nothing more than if you get a business card, within 48 hours, send an email. That begins to cultivate that relationship and begins to make it move from just being transactional to start being transformational. And maybe in that email, what you're saying is, let's get together for a virtual coffee if you can't get together in person. Or let's get together and grab coffee or tea or whatever the beverage of your choice. And then you begin to move into that next realm of what we'll talk about in the next episode, which is really talking about scholarship. But to get us started and to delve into the SHIPS framework a bit, which is a relationship based model that I introduced in my book, Engage, Invest, Grow. And if you want to get a copy of Engage, Invest, Grow, I encourage you, please go out and you can get that either by going to my website or going directly out to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. But use that as a guide to follow along. And then one of the other things I created for this series is a reflections journal that if you're a new subscriber, go to the Facebook page, drop it in the comments that you just subscribed, and we will send you that free gift of the relationship reflections journal for you to navigate the course with us or navigate this next journey or this series that we're calling it the SHIP series. Now, with all the administrative stuff out of the way, let's keep going. So you heard me talk about trust and transparency are the foundations of engagement. It really does come back to how do we begin to grow together, and one of the ways that we can do that is a relationship isn't just about being connected. It's not just about having a business card or having a Rolodex. Now I really dated myself, a Rolodex of people that you pick up when you need something. It's about being committed. It's about being engaged. It's about investing time, talent, and treasure. As a gentleman by the name of Jacob Stewart told me when I was a neophyte to the nonprofit world, he shared, Allie, you got to get people who want to give you of their time. They want to share their talents with you, and then they'll get around to making an investment by putting some of their treasure with you. I honor Jacob by bringing him up in that because it was really something that he did flawlessly and effortlessly because he, first of all, spent time to get to know people. And then he got into being trusting and transparent with people. And that's the currency, trusting and transparency as the currency for meaningful relationships. When you can build trust, that you know that if you ask that person a question, you can depend upon what they're going to tell you. And then they're being transparent and honest with you in their answer or their response or their engagement with you. It builds a relationship that lasts for years. I talk about Bill Guillory like it was yesterday, but that was over 16 years ago, folks, 18 years ago, actually, that I had an opportunity to train with him, be mentored by him, and move ahead. With Jacob Stewart, that was over 15 years ago, where opening myself up to building a relationship allowed me to enter that circle and learn from the relationship and have it be meaningful. And, the key word I want to share with you is authenticity. Authenticity, easy for me to say, right? Authentic relationships are transformational and they're not transactional. They're not just, I got some business cards, let me call them and follow through. No, that's not what I'm talking about, folks. What I'm talking about is spending time to write a little heartfelt message that, hey, I met you the other day. It was great meeting you, Sue. Loved hearing about your career over the years. And thanks for sharing a bit of your life with me. Let me see if we can connect again. And then you pour back into Sue, in this case, just to say, hey, you made a difference in my life by sharing a moment in time. And let me begin to see if there is a relationship that can be built. The three pillars of trust, as we break it down, are what I'm talking about, folks. I call it the 3 C's. It's consistency, communication, and credibility. You see, when we talk about consistency, it's how do you show up? How do you show up when in that time of need, or how do you show up in that time of giving back to the community? Or how do you show up at work? Are they consistently the same? Or do you show up at a certain place because you enjoy it and you show up differently in another environment? So you kind of got to check yourself at the door and make sure that the person that you're representing is the person that shows up in each and every environment. And when you show up the same way over time, that begins to build trust. The other one is communication. And I'm here to tell you, in this crazy time of social media, of being able to text everybody and message everybody at a moment's notice, it's really tough to see, are people really showing up and being their true selves, or are they popping in and being this way over here and another way in another environment? And then what is their communication like? Is it clear? Is it honest? Is it courageous dialogue? I just had an opportunity to talk with a good friend of mine before I got ready to go into the studio and record this. And before we knew it, we had spent an hour and a half on the phone just connecting, reconnecting, investing in each other, learning about what was going on. And we had built such a trust because we consistently show up who we are. Our communication was easy. It was clear to communicate with him and share even on a tough topic that took some courage to talk about. Courageous dialogue doesn't have to be negative and it doesn't have to wait for a problem. Courageous dialogue is stepping in and saying, this is what was going on. This is what I saw, and this is my opinion. And then having the respect enough of each other to be able to have dialogue about it. Doesn't require to demean one of the side or the other, or one side's better or more accurate. It's really understanding, how can we communicate to where I'm clear, meaning no ambiguity in what I'm saying. I'm honest, meaning I stand behind the words that I'm saying, and then that I am truly trying to make sure that through consistent, honest communication, I build a lasting relationship. The gentleman that I'm speaking of, I won't share his name because I don't have that permission, but he's a top level executive in the federal government doing some great work and has been there for years, served in the military as well, and just a great human being, right? And being able to pick up, just like we stopped talking yesterday, is one of the things that we built through having that ability to be a part of the three C's, which is that consistency, communication, and then that last C is credibility. See, I say what I mean and I do what I say. And with this gentleman and others, and all people from all walks of life, all backgrounds that I've had the pleasure to spend time with, their credibility is huge with me because they have consistently shown me who they are. They have communicated who they are and what they stand for. And then their credibility seals it, because what they say is what they mean, and what they mean is what they do. And it's just powerful in building the three pillars of trust. So let's recap. The three pillars of trust are all about the three C's, folks: consistency, communication, credibility, doing what you say and saying what you mean. And when you do that, you'll begin to build the trust that's just incredible. I remember that as a young Marine, one of the things that always came about was honor and integrity. That if, as a Marine, if you said something and you're repeating it either to your troops, if you're in leadership, or you're reporting back to your commanding officer or your NCOIC, you spoke the truth. There was no opportunity to sway from it. The key thing is, I saw people who swayed from that end up getting themselves in a lot of trouble. And then it became to where they weren't considered to be trustworthy. And then in those relationships, even though that I was in the military, I've been able to garner some of those relationships. I remember talking about a battalion commander I had when I was a young E3 that over in Korea had called me in to ask me how things were going. And I can remember asking him, "Sir, you want me to tell you the truth? You want me to tell you what you want to hear?" And he said the truth. And what that showed me is that that lieutenant colonel at the time, again, being an E3, that means I had mosquito wings with cross rifles in the center, if you're familiar with the Marine Corps insignias. And I was low on the totem pole, but it was so important to me, and it built a trust with that leader that he took time to ask me my opinion. And then I was definitely going to honestly and accurately reflect what my opinion was, but make sure that I could back it up with truth and evidence. So I wasn't just out there. It built a relationship that over the years, that as I became a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps, he would later actually also be my commanding officer at another battalion. And we would just continue to share. Even after getting out of the Marine Corps, there was a relationship. It was just powerful because I had built that trust, that credibility with him. and through our communications have proven myself to be worthy of building a relationship that has lasted over the years. The key thing is delivering upon the expectations that you promise. That will build the trust. And when you're under pressure, you don't collapse and you don't lack transparency just because there's a challenge. Sometimes relationships have to go through that test of times and that tried and true challenge in order for them to grow and thrive, especially in our business community. Let's do a relationship check in here and ask you this question right here. Who are your most trusted relationships right now? Who do you trust most? Who is that person that you know you can pick up the phone and they're going to answer on the other end? In fact, I love talking with friends who say, I have such a great relationship with that person that it's like we never stopped talking and it's been 10 years. Who are those people in your life? If you have the reflections journal, write them down right now. If you don't have the journal yet, write it down on a piece of paper, because what you're doing now is starting to take inventory of who are those people that fit the 3 C's of trust, that have been transparent with you and that built a meaningful relationship over the years. So it's so important for you to think about that. And then the next thing I would ask you is, who is your biggest person that has made an impact on you with their leadership and their influence? Think about that for a moment. Who is that person that you know that you could call for that piece of advice or that engagement that you need to be able to move to the next place? Who's that strong leader or employee relationships where engagement increases and they make you want to come to work? I was having an opportunity to share with a new person that just really made an indelible impression upon me. And I just met the person yesterday, but her story of how she survived cancer and what her organization went the extra mile to do to be able to show their appreciation for her has built a relationship to where she's been with the company now over 20 years and isn't even thinking about retiring. And she is of an age where she could. But because of the pouring in, which is what I call relationship deposits that she made in the company, and because of what the company did in pouring into her, they helped her through a most difficult time. And that is a powerful relationship. You probably can't get her to leave that organization. And it's probably tough to get in that organization because they have built trust, they have clear communication, they're concise and do the things that they believe in. We got to be able to have those courageous conversations too. That sometimes you really find out where a person is and how they're thinking by what they're saying. So here's a reflection for you that I'd like you to think about. Which of your current relationships are built on mutual trust? Who do you know has your back no matter what, no matter the challenge? Or as they used to say when I was younger, who's that ride or die friend or relationship or workplace person that you can call on and say, we're going to get this done. We're going to get it done together. Because when you talk about the culture and the environment and building relationships, a lot of people have listened to uh, collegial advice that says that you don't build relationships, you just go to work, you show up, you stay in your cube. But the teams that are most productive, folks, are ones that have relationships and they know a bit about the person and what they're going through. And they begin to show compassion. And through that compassion, it just draws that bond closer together. And studies have proven that those teams that have built good relationships and have good working relationships are even more productive and accomplish the work faster and more efficiently. And they perfect it even better when they come together as a team because of relationships. How many of you right now are in an environment where you haven't had a conversation with the person in the next cubicle in days? Or you may never have even talked to your partner that you'd have to do business with, but you don't know them. I remember a gentleman reading Engage, Invest, Grow and was so moved by it. He started putting tabs into it. He marked it up. He highlighted it. He was like, Allie, I needed this 10 years ago. Well, he was working in an auto dealership and just an incredible human being if you ever got a chance to meet him. But he was saying, I run the parts area. And there's the sales area. And we seldom meet in the middle. He says, but I have everything that the salespeople need. And I need to be able to get in front of their people so that once their customer comes in, they know to come to us when they need things for their car. And he says, we put it all on the website. And I asked him, I said, hey, have you ever met with the people who developed the website? He's like, yeah, they're somewhere here. I don't know where they are. They were actually upstairs, folks, about 13 steps up and to the right. And I suggested, and as you read the book, Engage, Invest, Grow, one of the things I tell you as a relationship catalyst is have a coffee, a beverage, a glass of water, tea, a soda, whichever one it is for you. Have one with the people that you work with, that you're engaged with, that you need to build the relationships. He says, Allie, I never thought about it. They were actually upstairs. I went and sat and talked with them, bought them all Dunkin' Donuts and coffee. He says, now everything that I have wanted to do before that I was getting pushback, I'm not getting pushback before. The integration of both businesses, which helps the dealership increase its productivity, because now the people who were having the voice of the dealership and crafting their social presence and how they would advertise and how they would show up on the website were beginning to talk. And from that conversation, they were able to move ahead. Through that cup of coffee, he was able to help generate a better product for their ultimate clients. Excuse me. And in doing that, they actually met the needs of the customer better. Simple cup of coffee, a donut or two, and relationship catalyst happened, and transparency and trust began to build. And he later reported to me, he says, reading your book, and that's just not a selfish plug, folks, but reading your book and understanding the power of relationships has helped me improve my effectiveness at work, my ability to get things done, and I've met new friends along the way. So I'll ask you again, which of your current relationships are built on mutual trust? Now, the other side of that, which ones need some repair or realignment? You need to invest some time, some talent, and some energy into helping to grow that relationship, helping to maybe repair it or helping to realign it so that it becomes more productive. Take a moment and just write that down. I'm going to clear my throat here. Just give me a second. What I would encourage you to do is not only write it down, but share it with a friend or that partner or your best friend or someone, and then take action. Take one action a day. Let's go back to the business card example. So many times I walked around that box of cards and I carried it from office to office, from city to city. And by the time I got around to going through them, I didn't even know who was in them. By simply setting up that one little action within 24 to 48 hours of sending an email or sending a text or sending a note to say, hey, it was great meeting you, or hey, it was great. I would love to get together to see, how I can help you. Sometimes offer your services before you ask, attain that goal that we talked about. Or it just may be simply as you begin to build a relationship, it's how you learn to nurture it. Facebook does a great deal of service when they put up the notices that it's everybody's birthday, right? But what's the power of using a punch bowl application, which allows you to send a business card or a card electronically to somebody that just shows that I cared a little bit more just going out and clicking a button. I cared a little bit more that I drafted you a personal message to say thank you, that I cared a little bit more to show that your relationship or knowing you is important to me. As I begin to wrap this up, I want to tell you that one of the biggest things you can do is trust impacts your leadership or your influence. If you're a leader, I want to suggest that how you build trust with your team is through the examples that you show. How do you build relationships with your team that are productive, prosperous, that are helping to move the organization forward is going back to the 3 C's of the trust pillars. Stay consistent, folks. Stay focused on delivering who you are each and every time. Have clear, streamlined communications. Be honest and be transparent. And lastly, making sure that your credibility isn't damaged. One of the things about off the record that I tell people is you show up in the room before you ever get there. Your reputation's there. And guess what? It lingers after you leave. It's the conversations that happen before you get in the room, during your time in the room, and a lot of times the ones that make it or break you are the ones that happen when you leave. Make sure that you consistently show up as who you are, that you clearly communicate your value and others' values in the relationships that you have, and then maintain the credibility. Always look to see how you can do more than what you're asking for others. As we continue to go through this series, our next up, we're going to talk about scholarship. We're actually going to have a guest join me. So it's not just me talking at you, but always in my series, I want to lay the foundational work and then have guests come in and reinforce it with their stories, their ideas, and their experiences. And then we're going to summarize at the end to make sure that we didn't drop one nugget along the way. I'm going to ask your support in that we can come together on this, and let's continue to grow this community. Let's grow the Off the Record, the Real Talk podcast community by going to and subscribing at YouTube or wherever you listen to it on one of the platforms, whether that be iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or that be Podbean or Spotify. Join me. Drop me a note on Facebook. I'd love to hear comments about the show. What else can I add for you? What else can I answer for you? If I've touched on a topic that's triggered something, let me know so that I can help you move forward, because the whole purpose of this podcast is to grow people and be better human beings as we put humanity back into being human. As I close and say this, your next step, a lot of people say, so what's my next step with this? Your next step is tune in next Wednesday, because if it's 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, it's time for the Off the Record, the Real Talk podcast with me. But most importantly, folks, I just want you to know that relationships have been the driver to my success. I can tell you doors have opened to help me get into incredible positions at Mayo Clinic when I worked there, Walt Disney Parks and Resorts. Doors have helped open and helped me advance my career, even took me to politics for a moment. Every step of the way, it has been my relationships that have sustained me, helped me grow, and helped me move to the next level. And my goal is to give you the blueprint so that you build mutually rewarding relationships. So show up next Wednesday, 6 p.m., and we're going to go on into the next step as we go through the SHIPS framework and that scholarship, learning about each other. I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 6 p.m. And remember always, if it's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, it's time for Off the Record, the Real Talk podcast. Take care. See you soon.